I never thought my husband's funeral would turn into the greatest humiliation of my life, delivered by my own daughter. There I was, front row, heart in pieces, clutching Harold's photo like it could hold me together. The choir sang the final hymn, and I could barely stand. 42 years of marriage don't just vanish in one afternoon, right? Then Lisa, my daughter, stood up. She wore that black dress I once gave her for her first job interview, and still, she wouldn't look at me. She walked right to the center aisle of the church, turned to face everyone, friends, family, neighbors, and with a voice I'd never heard from her before, she shouted, "You're not getting a single penny, you old witch." The silence was deafening. You could hear her words bouncing off the stained glass. Then came the murmurs, the stares, and her heels clacking away down the aisle, leaving Harold behind, silent in his coffin as ever. I felt like the air had been yanked from my lungs. I sat frozen. Not a tear, not a scream. Nothing. Just that cold, hollow feeling that only betrayal can leave behind. My daughter? My own daughter, who used to cling to my neck when she had a fever. A lady from my book club gently touched my shoulder. "Oh Mary, how awful, are you all right?" Of course I wasn't. But I nodded. Because at this age, you learn how to pretend when your world is falling apart. What no one else knew was that earlier that morning, before the service, Lisa had looked at me with that twisted smile and whispered, "So glad you came, Mom. You'll see what's coming." I thought she meant the condolences. The shared grief. The mourning. Silly me. I didn't know then that those words were a threat wrapped in warmth. Or that the real battle hadn't even started yet. When I stepped out of the church, the air smelled like rain. But not a drop had fallen. Everything held back, just like me. That night, instead of mourning Harold, I opened the safe. I touched the papers. I read his will for the 5th time. To my wife Mary, I leave the house and the majority of my assets. To my daughter Lisa, whatever my wife deems fair. Harold knew me. He saw this coming. He wrote it down with a steady hand. He left me everything, not to punish but to protect. And now, Lisa, my daughter, my flesh and blood, had declared war. Right there, in front of her father's casket. But I won't scream. I won't cry. I won't do anything, yet. Because dignity is a weapon too. 2 days later, I was still walking around the house like a ghost. The sympathy cards were piling up on the dining table, unopened. People meant well, I knew that, but I couldn't bring myself to read their kind words when all I could hear was my daughter's voice echoing through that church. "You won't get a single penny." I sat on the edge of the sofa, in the same spot Harold used to nap after lunch. His cushion still had the shape of his shoulders. I hadn't touched it. I wasn't ready. What broke me wasn't just his absence, it was how Lisa turned my morning into a battlefield. I hadn't even started thinking about money. I hadn't logged into our bank account. I hadn't opened the envelope from the lawyer's office. All I wanted was to get through the funeral without falling apart. But Lisa, no. She had other plans. Every knock on the door made me jump. I kept thinking it might be her. Coming back to apologize. To explain. To undo what she'd done. She didn't. Instead, I got calls from neighbors. "We're so sorry, Mary." That scene at the church. We didn't know what to say. Neither did I. I hadn't spoken to anyone, really. I didn't have the words. Grief had swallowed my voice, and shame had built a wall around my heart. Was this what I had raised? A daughter who saw her father's death as a power grab? A daughter who humiliated her mother publicly and walked away without looking back? I stared at the wedding photo on the wall. Harold in his navy suit, me in my handmade lace dress, Lisa just 5 years old, grinning between us. That little girl would have cried if I scraped my knee. That little girl used to bring me dandelions and say, "I love you, Mommy." Now she looked at me like an enemy. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring. Harold had always said, "Lisa's driven. Just give her time." But he hadn't seen this side of her. Or maybe he had, and just didn't want to admit it. That night, I made tea, 2 cups, like always, and set one in front of Harold's photo. Habit, I suppose. I whispered, "What do I do now?" No answer. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the old house settling. But something inside me answered, "You survive. And then, you decide what comes next." I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold. No sugar, no milk, just bitter and strong, like the truth I was finally ready to face. It wasn't sudden, what happened at the funeral. No, that kind of cruelty doesn't grow overnight. It takes root slowly, in silence, while you're too busy hoping to notice. I started replaying the past year in my mind like an old film. Lisa had changed when Harold got sick. At first, I thought it was the stress, the fear of losing her father. But now I see it for what it was, distance. Not emotional, calculated. She came by less and less. And when she did, it was always business. Have you and Dad thought about downsizing? You could liquidate some of the stocks for his treatments. Why keep the house so big when it's just the two of you? At the time, I defended her. She's just practical, I'd tell Harold, even when her visits left a sour taste in my mouth. She's thinking ahead. She loves us in her own way. But Harold never questioned her. He'd squeeze my hand and say, "Let her be. She's busy. She'll come around." She never did. The last Thanksgiving we spent together, she didn't even bring a dish. Just showed up in a hurry, kissed her father on the forehead, and launched into a conversation about estate planning. Harold didn't notice, he was thrilled she came at all. I did notice. I noticed everything, but I swallowed it, like I'd swallowed so much through the years. That's what mothers do, right? We excuse. We hope. We give the benefit of the doubt. But now, sitting here with Harold gone and Lisa's words still burning in my ears, I realized something awful. She didn't see me as her mother anymore. She saw me as an obstacle. Maybe even as a wallet with a heartbeat. The tea had gone completely cold, but I drank it anyway. I needed something to anchor me. Then I looked around the kitchen, the walls Harold painted, the worn countertop where we prepared meals side by side, the window where I once watched Lisa play hopscotch on the driveway. I whispered out loud, more to myself than anyone, "How did we get here?" But deep down, I already knew. Little by little, moment by moment, I let her believe love was something I owed her, forever. No questions asked. But that era was ending. And she was going to learn something she never expected. This mother? She remembers everything. 2 weeks after Harold's funeral, I found myself sitting across from Mr. Whitaker, our family lawyer, in a room that smelled like old paper and polished wood. I'd been there before, back when Harold and I updated our wills after he retired. Back then, we laughed through the process, arguing over who would get our collection of vinyl records. But today, there was no laughter. Just me, Mr. Whitaker, and the sound of the grandfather clock ticking behind him like a heartbeat. Lisa was late, of course. Always late when it mattered. When she finally swept in, it was like a breeze of cold perfume and attitude. Dressed in black again, but not in mourning, more like a corporate widow ready for business. She greeted Mr. Whitaker with a too sweet smile and sat beside me without a glance. I noticed the large leather tote she brought. Roomy enough to carry expectations. Mr. Whitaker adjusted his glasses and began reading. I, Harold James Whitaker, being of sound mind. My heart clenched. Just hearing his voice on paper again felt like losing him all over. Lisa leaned forward as if waiting for her cue. Probably rehearsed her grief face in the car. Then came the words that shifted the air. Leave the family home and the majority of my financial assets to my beloved wife, Mary, in appreciation for her decades of love, partnership, and care. Lisa blinked, then froze. Mr. Whitaker continued, calmly, to my daughter Lisa, I leave the contents of my study and the classic car we restored together, in hopes she will remember our good times. Lisa didn't speak, not a word, but I saw it, the way the color drained from her cheeks, how her jaw tensed, how her fingers curled around the armrest like claws. She looked like someone who just watched the jackpot slip from their hands. And me? I felt complicated. Guilt, relief, sadness, strength. Harold had seen what I saw. Maybe not all of it, but enough to know she couldn't be trusted with everything. And now she was realizing that too. As Mr. Whitaker gathered the documents, Lisa stood up. "Is that it?" she asked, voice tight. "Yes," he said, without hesitation. Lisa turned to me then, finally looked at me, but not with affection. No, with fury. She didn't say a thing. Just grabbed her bag and stormed out, the door slamming behind her like a final verdict. Mr. Whitaker raised an eyebrow. "Shall I walk you to your car, Mary?" "No," I said, standing slowly. "Let her have her exit. I'll take mine in peace." But as I stepped out into the hallway, I caught a glimpse of Lisa through the glass, her eyes not tearful, but sharp. Calculating. She hadn't been defeated. Not yet. But I wasn't afraid, because Harold hadn't just left me assets. He'd left me power. We stepped out of Mr. Whitaker's office into the late afternoon sun. The breeze was soft, almost kind. I remember thinking, funny how the weather doesn't match your mood when your world's been cracked open. Lisa walked ahead of me, arms crossed, face unreadable. She didn't say a word. Part of me, some small, stubborn part, still hoped she might turn around and say, "Mom, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking, I was just upset, but I should have known better." She didn't even look at me. When we reached the parking lot, she paused by her car. A sleek, black thing Harold had once called a purse on wheels. She leaned on the door and finally turned her head in my direction. Our eyes met for the briefest moment. I was bracing for a storm. A scream. A slap of words like at the funeral. But none came. Just silence. And then, a smile. Not a warm one. Not even a polite one. A slow, tight-lipped curl that sent a shiver down my spine. There was no regret in that smile. No apology. Only calculation. That's when I knew. Lisa wasn't finished. She hadn't accepted the will. She hadn't walked away empty-handed in her mind. No, she was regrouping. Retooling. Plotting. I could feel it like a weight on my chest. She got in her car and drove off without saying goodbye. No wave. No glance back. Just the screech of tires against pavement. And me? I stood there in the middle of the parking lot with my purse slung over my shoulder and a folder of legal documents clutched in my hand like a shield. Inside that folder was protection. But outside? I was on my own. The next few hours were a blur, driving home, making tea, opening and closing drawers like something might magically organize itself. Harold's slippers were still by the bed. His cologne still on the shelf. His toothbrush next to mine. I hadn't moved a thing. But something inside me had shifted. Lisa's silence wasn't peace. It was a pause. A breath before the next move. And I'd be ready. Because I'd learned something standing on that driveway, staring into her cold smile. You don't have to raise your voice to start a war. I didn't tell anyone what happened at the lawyer's office. Not right away. But by Sunday, the weight of it all felt too heavy to carry alone. So I went to the one person who's always seen through me, even when I tried to hide behind polite smiles and, "I'm fine," Evelyn. We met at the church fellowship room, like we always did for tea after service. She brought her lemon cookies, the ones Harold always stole when he thought no one was looking. We sat at our usual table near the window, sunlight warming the lace tablecloth. I poured the tea. She passed me a cookie. I didn't touch it. "All right," she said, folding her hands. "Out with it." I sighed. Lisa exploded at the funeral. Called me a witch. In front of everyone. Evelyn blinked, then raised one eyebrow. "A witch? That's rich. You bake pies and rescue stray cats. What's her problem now?" I laughed, but only a little. Then I told her the rest. About the will. The cold smile. The silence. When I finished, Evelyn didn't gasp or shake her head like most would. She just looked at me, long and steady. "Be careful, Mary," she said finally. "Grief makes people greedy, especially the ones who were already looking at you like an ATM." I nodded slowly. "You think she'll come after me?" "I think she already has." "That look you described? That wasn't surrender. That was strategy." She took a sip of tea. "You need to start documenting everything. Every call, every message. Keep a notebook. Don't talk money unless you write it down afterward. I felt a chill run down my arms. That serious? Evelyn reached into her purse and pulled out a small notepad. Got this one at the pharmacy. Keep it by your phone. I took it. The cover was plain blue, but it felt heavy in my hands. Like armor. She might try to manipulate you, Evelyn continued. Or twist your words. Or worse, make it look like you're the one losing grip. She wouldn't, Mary. Evelyn leaned forward. She already would. She already did. That silenced me. We sat for a while, watching the wind sway the church's rose bushes. I thought about all the things I'd brushed off. All the signs I'd excused because she's my daughter. Maybe being a mother had made me blind. But not anymore. That night, I placed Evelyn's notepad on my kitchen counter, next to the phone. I wrote the date on the first page. Drew a neat line underneath. And I waited. Because Lisa would call again. Of course she would. And when she did, I'd be ready, with pen in hand. It started with phone calls. Soft. Sweet. Like honey laced with vinegar. Hi, Mom, how are you feeling today? Just checking in. I know things have been tense. I've been thinking maybe you should stay with me for a while. You know, not be alone in that big house. At first, I wanted to believe her. I really did. Her voice sounded like the old Lisa, the one who used to call after every job interview, the one who brought me sunflowers on Mother's Day. But then came the little things. The strange chill in the house when I came home from the grocery store, like the windows had been left open. The back gate I always latched, found swinging in the wind. And then, the roses. My rose garden was my pride. Harold helped me plant it after his retirement. We'd spent mornings trimming, watering, talking about everything and nothing. He used to say, if these roses could talk, they'd write better stories than we ever could. Last Tuesday, I was out there with my gloves and pruning shears when I noticed it. The hose, my long, sturdy green garden hose, was sliced clean through. Not torn, not chewed, cut, sharp and precise. I bent down, ran my fingers over the rubber. The cut was fresh. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I stood up, looked around the garden, and realized. This wasn't neglect. It was a message. That same afternoon, Lisa called again. I've been thinking, Mom, are you eating well? I could send you one of those meal delivery services. Or you could come stay here, just for a few weeks. I picked up Evelyn's little blue notebook and wrote it all down. Date, time, what she said, what I said, what she didn't say. That evening, I checked the locks. Every door, every window. I pulled out the box of spare keys and counted them twice. One set was missing. The one I gave Lisa last Christmas, just in case. I sat on the couch, heart thudding like a drum. Harold's slippers still waited by the fireplace. And in that moment, I made a quiet promise. If she wanted to push, I would not break. If she wanted to fight, I wouldn't scream. I'd write. I'd remember. I'd prepare. Because she thought I was soft. But even roses have thorns. It was a Wednesday. The sky was clear, the air crisp. One of those days where you almost believe the world is still gentle. I opened the mailbox expecting the usual, flyers, bills, maybe a card from an old church friend. Instead, there was a white envelope stamped with the county seal. I frowned. Inside was a letter. A formal notice. Cold. Clinical. Lisa had filed for a competency hearing. She was requesting the court to evaluate whether I was mentally fit to manage my own property and financial decisions. I stood there on the sidewalk, knees trembling, fingers gripping that paper so tightly it crinkled. Cars passed by. Birds chirped. The world kept going. But I felt like the ground had split beneath me. I sat on the porch step, rereading it 3 times. Each sentence hit harder than the last. Lisa was claiming I was confused. Isolated, possibly suffering from age-related decline. She said she was concerned for my well-being and acting in my best interest. I had seen that phrase before, best interest. It's what vultures say right before they tear into the carcass. She wanted to be appointed conservator. That meant full access to my accounts. The house. Everything. A legal erasure of my independence. I thought of Harold's voice in the garden. Take care of yourself if I go first. Now I knew why. I didn't cry. I didn't call Evelyn. I just went inside, locked the door, and sat at the kitchen table with that envelope in front of me. Then I opened Evelyn's little notebook and wrote, Lisa filed to take control of everything. She's not just cutting hoses anymore. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The shadows looked different, thicker, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. But I wasn't scared. I was awake, wide awake, because now it was official. She wasn't just after money. She was after me, and I wasn't going down quietly. The next morning, I got dressed like I was going to church. Pressed blouse, sensible shoes, hair combed back tight. I wanted to look the way I felt inside, clear, firm, unshakable. At the community center downtown, they host a legal clinic every Thursday. I'd passed by that sign for years, free legal advice for seniors. I never thought I'd need it. But that day, I walked through those doors like a soldier entering a bunker. A young woman with kind eyes greeted me. How can we help you today, ma'am? I handed her the letter Lisa had sent the court. Her eyes scanned it, and her smile faded. Would you like to speak with a legal advocate? I'd like to speak with a lawyer, I said, and surprised even myself with how steady I sounded. 15 minutes later, I was sitting across from a woman named Carla. Mid-30s, sharp suit, no nonsense. She reminded me a bit of myself, back when I used to handle the PTA budget with military precision. She read the letter silently, then looked up at me. This happens more often than you'd think, she said. Adult children trying to take control of a parent's finances, especially when they believe there's an inheritance involved. I nodded. My husband passed 3 weeks ago. He left everything to me. My daughter didn't take it well. She's using grief as a cover, Carla said. But we can fight this. First, we file a formal objection. Then we gather evidence, medical records, proof of financial management, character witnesses. Anything to show you're fully capable. I've been documenting everything, I told her, and pulled Evelyn's little notebook from my purse. Carla smiled, genuinely this time. That will help more than you know. She gave me a checklist. A list of steps. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than grief or fear. I felt grounded. When I left the clinic, the sun was still high, the breeze warm. I walked a little taller. Because now I had something Lisa didn't expect me to have, a plan. The first thing I did was cancel the spare key Lisa had. Not literally, of course. But I changed every lock on my house, front door, back door, garage, even the old shed where Harold kept his tools. The locksmith asked, had a break-in? I looked him dead in the eye and said, not yet. But I'm making sure it stays that way. Then I called Carla from the clinic and asked for a referral to a private attorney. I wanted someone seasoned, tough, someone who wouldn't flinch if Lisa showed up in a power suit with a fake smile. By Friday, I was sitting in a proper office, leather chairs, books lining the walls, a woman named Ms. Vega across from me, reading my file like a detective with a grudge. You've got everything going for you, she said. Clear finances, stable health, documentation of your daughter's harassment. You've done half my work already. I laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because it felt good to finally be taken seriously. I want to lock everything down, I told her. Bank accounts, property titles, digital access, the will, everything. And that's what we did. She drafted new documents. We made sure every asset was in my name only. I updated my will to reflect not just my wishes, but my reality. Lisa wouldn't get another dime. I even recorded a video statement, just like Ms. Vega suggested, me, sitting straight-backed at my dining room table, saying clearly, I am of sound mind, and I know exactly who I am protecting myself from. That night, I locked my study for the first time in years. Inside were Harold's papers, the house deed, all the passwords I'd written in a little brown ledger with his handwriting on the cover. I put it in a fireproof safe and placed it behind the bookshelf, where no one would think to look. Then, as if on cue, the doorbell rang. It was Lisa. She was dressed down, jeans, hoodie, no makeup. The concerned daughter, look. She knocked again, then pounded. Mom, are you seriously locking me out now? This is ridiculous. I didn't answer. You're making a mistake, she shouted. I stood behind the curtains, watching her through the crack in the fabric. My heart was racing, but not from fear. It was from power. I didn't owe her a door anymore. I didn't owe her anything. She banged once more, then finally left, muttering something about getting the courts involved again. Let her try, because now? I was ready. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow tick of the clock and the hum of the old refrigerator in the next room. Harold's photo was on the nightstand. He was laughing in it, head tilted back, eyes crinkled at the corners. That laugh used to fill this house. It still echoed in certain corners if I stayed quiet long enough. I turned the photo toward me, needing his face. Needing something. And I remembered. It was after one of Lisa's visits last year. She'd shown up, walked straight to the kitchen, and launched into her usual monologue, how we were sitting on too much equity, how other people our age were already gifting assets to their kids. She made it sound like generosity had an expiration date. When she left, I'd been upset. Not angry, more hollow. Like I'd just been audited emotionally. Harold found me sitting on the porch, staring at nothing. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just placed his hand on mine and said, "Take care of yourself if I go first." I remember I laughed. That's morbid. But his eyes were serious. Promise me. And I had. Absent-mindedly. Like you do when the moment feels too far away to matter. But now it mattered. Because Harold had known. He'd seen it too. The way Lisa's love had started to come with a price tag. He just didn't want to believe it fully, any more than I had. And still, he left me everything. Not out of favoritism, out of faith. Because he trusted me to do what he never could. Say no. I reached for the notebook Evelyn had given me and flipped back through the pages. Every call, every message, every attempt to twist the knife while pretending to kiss the wound. Then I wrote, in big letters across the top of the newest page, "I will not give her the satisfaction of watching me fall." I placed the notebook beside Harold's photo. Let her come. Let her scheme. Let her tell whatever lies she wants. I may be older. I may be grieving. But I'm not weak. Not anymore. I spent the next 3 days moving in silence. No dramatic announcements. No social media posts. Just one quiet decision after another. First stop, the bank. I sat with the branch manager, someone I'd known for years, and told him calmly, I want to change every password, remove any authorized users, and place a red flag on my account. No one moves a cent without my written approval. He looked surprised but didn't question it. Just nodded and got to work. When I left, my money was finally mine again, not just legally, but practically. Second stop, the title office. I refiled the deed to the house, updating it with fresh paperwork. Sole owner, Mary Whitaker. No co-signers, no transfer on death to Lisa. Nothing for her to manipulate later. It felt like erasing a smudge from glass I'd stared through for too long. Third, back to Ms. Vega, my lawyer. I want to rewrite my will, I said. Tight, ironclad, no gray areas. She smiled. Already ahead of you. We drafted a version that left Lisa a clear message. You don't get to hurt me and benefit from it. No vague promises. No loopholes she could worm through later with another court filing. I even named Evelyn as a secondary executor, someone who knew the truth, who'd stand her ground if Lisa ever tried anything. Then, Ms. Vega suggested something I hadn't considered. A video statement, she said. They're powerful, especially when children try to claim confusion or coercion later. So I did it. Hair brushed, blouse pressed. I sat in front of a plain white wall and looked directly into the camera. My name is Mary Whitaker, I said, clear and steady. I am of sound mind. And I am protecting myself from financial abuse by my daughter, Lisa Whitaker. Everything I've done, every document I've signed, was my choice. Fully, completely, and without influence. When I finished, I felt lighter. Not because the danger was gone, but because I wasn't hiding anymore. Lisa had tried to twist reality. She'd smiled sweetly while digging her claws deeper. She'd used every tactic, guilt, manipulation, even legal force. And I'd answered her the only way I knew how, with facts. With documents. With truth. No tears. No begging. No more hoping she'd come around. Because I'd come around. And that was enough. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Not like on TV. No grand speeches, no gavel slams. Just pale walls, soft carpet, and a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. But for me, this was war. Lisa sat across the aisle with her attorney, a young man with slicked hair and folders too thick for the truth. She wore beige, soft makeup, a look carefully crafted to whisper, "I'm just worried about my mother." I didn't look at her. Ms. Vega sat beside me, calm as ever. She handed me a copy of the documents we'd prepared. I held them like armor. The hearing began. Lisa's lawyer went first. He described a decline in judgment, how I'd isolated myself, how I'd refused support, and displayed erratic financial behavior, words meant to make me sound frail, unstable, confused. Then came the witness. Lisa brought her neighbor, someone I barely knew, to claim I'd been wandering outside late at night, and seemed disoriented. I didn't flinch. I just wrote her name in Evelyn's notebook. Another to remember. Then it was my turn. Ms. Vega stood and laid it all out. My medical evaluations from 2 separate doctors confirming mental clarity, my financial records showing consistent, stable management, my handwritten notes. The revised will, the bank statements, the notarized affidavits, and the video. We played it in full. Me, calm, clear, composed. My voice steady as stone. The courtroom was quiet. Lisa looked pale. Then, Ms. Vega called Evelyn. She walked to the stand with the grace of a woman who's buried friends and secrets and still knew how to smile. She told the court everything. Lisa's manipulation, the veiled threats, the inheritance talk before Harold was even in the ground. Then, she held up the little blue notebook. "Mary started keeping this," Evelyn said, after I warned her to be careful. "It has every word, every message, every date." The judge asked to see it. He flipped through, nodding slowly. I saw something shift in his face. A small, almost imperceptible crease of respect. When the closing arguments ended, he didn't take long. "I see no evidence of mental incapacity," he said, looking directly at Lisa. "What I do see is a competent woman who has taken all the right steps to protect herself." Then he turned to me. "Ms. Whitaker, your objection is upheld. You remain in full control of your estate." It was over. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Lisa stood slowly. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. On the courthouse steps, she caught up to me. "This isn't over," she hissed. I looked her in the eyes for the first time in weeks and said, softly, "You already lost the most important thing, your mother's trust." The courthouse steps were wide and gray, bathed in that unforgiving afternoon light that shows every crack in the pavement, and in people. I was just stepping down, Evelyn by my side, when I heard heels behind me. Fast. Angry. "Mom." I stopped, slowly turned. Lisa stood there, arms stiff at her sides, fists clenched. No more soft makeup. No more concerned daughter. Just raw fury wearing a silk blouse. "You think this is over?" she spat. "You embarrassed me in there. You made me look like I was trying to rob you." I raised an eyebrow. "Lisa, you were trying to rob me. Not with a mask and a gun, but with a smile and a signature." She blinked. That fake shock, like she couldn't believe I dared to say it out loud. Evelyn stepped aside, bless her, but didn't leave. She stood nearby, arms folded. "A witness. Just in case." Lisa's voice lowered, sharp as glass. "You've turned everyone against me." "No," I said. "You did that yourself. You know what people are saying now? That I'm a monster. That I tried to take your house." They're not wrong, I replied. She took a step closer. You really think you're going to live out your little golden years alone? In that house? With what? Your cats and your notepads. There it was. The real Lisa. Not sad. Not scared. Just mad she didn't get what she wanted. And for the first time since Harold died, I didn't feel hurt. I felt free. I stepped down one more stair, leveled my gaze at her, and said, calm and clear, you already lost the most important thing, your mother's trust. And you can't get that back with lawyers or lies. She flinched, just a flicker. And then that smirk returned. You'll regret this. I'm still your daughter. Yes, I said, and I'm still your mother. But I'm not your victim. She opened her mouth to speak again, but I walked away. Didn't run. Didn't look back. Let the whole world watch her stand there, furious and alone, on the courthouse steps where she tried to rewrite the story of my life. I had written a new ending instead. And I was just getting started. She came back. I knew she would. It was a week after the hearing. I'd just finished folding laundry, sheets Harold used to wrap himself in during long afternoon naps. I was humming without realizing it. Then the doorbell rang. I didn't jump this time. I walked to the door, looked through the peephole, and there she was. Lisa. No makeup. No rage. Just tired. I opened the door halfway. Not a crack. Not wide. Just enough for her to know this wasn't her door anymore. Hi, Mom, she said. No sweet tone this time. Just flat. I waited. I'm not here to fight, she added. I need a loan. There it was. She looked down, wringing her hands. I made mistakes. I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have gone to court. I got bad advice. But things are rough right now. Credit card bills. The apartment. I'm drowning. I studied her face. The girl I raised was still in there, somewhere. But I also saw the woman who'd screamed at me during her father's funeral. Who'd tried to take everything, including my name. You want a loan, I said, slowly. After all this. She nodded. I stepped back, opened the door wider. She blinked, surprised. Come in, I said. She entered cautiously, like stepping onto unfamiliar ground. Which it was now. She looked around, like seeing it for the first time. You've changed things. I've reclaimed things, I corrected. She sat on the edge of the couch, like a guest. I walked into the study, came back with a small folder. Set it on the table between us. I want you to know something, I began. I've recorded everything. Every attempt. Every threat. Every document. It's all here, backed up, notarized, and filed. Lisa shifted. I'm not here to. I know why you're here, I said, calm but firm. But this time, I want you to hear me. She fell quiet. I have changed my will. You won't inherit anything. Not the house. Not the savings. Not a single trinket from this living room. You lost that, not because you asked for help, but because you tried to steal it. Her mouth opened, then closed again. If you ever come back, I continued, it must be to apologize. Not for money, not for a loan, not for convenience, but for what you've become. She stared at me, no tears, no drama, just the weight of it finally sinking in. I stood. I think it's time for you to go. She nodded slowly, stood up, and walked to the door. Before stepping out, she looked back. You used to say I was your baby girl. I did, I said. Until you taught me to protect myself from you. And with that, she was gone. The door clicked shut. I turned the lock. And just like that, I was truly free. The house was silent again. But this time, it didn't feel like a grave. It felt like peace. I stood in the kitchen, a cup of evening tea warming my hands. The same mug Harold used to tease me about, chipped at the rim, faded flowers. You've had that thing since Reagan was president, he'd joke. Now it was just me, the tea, and the hush of a house finally closed to chaos. Lisa hadn't called. Not once. A neighbor mentioned she'd moved, packed up her apartment and left the state. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't leave a forwarding address. Not that I needed one. Guess she was mad you ruined her plans, the neighbor said. I just smiled. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone anymore. Lisa's silence didn't ache like it used to. It felt like a door I had locked, and swallowed the key. I walked through the living room, straightened the photo on the mantel. The one from our 40th anniversary party, me in blue, Harold in that awful plaid tie he loved. Lisa's smile in that photo looked real. I left it there. A memory, not a threat. Then I lit a candle. Lavender. Harold always said it reminded him of summer nights on the porch. I let it burn while I sat at the kitchen table, Evelyn's notebook beside me, now almost full. Every page a testament to the storm I'd survived. A storm I hadn't asked for, but one I weathered all the same. And in that calm, I allowed myself something I hadn't in a long time, a full breath. The kind that fills you from the inside. That says, you're not just surviving anymore. You're living again. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was just whole. 3 months later, I hosted a small brunch in my garden. Just a handful of friends, Evelyn, of course, plus the ladies from the book club, and that sweet widow from 2 blocks down who always brings fresh biscuits wrapped in cloth. We sat under the pergola Harold built, surrounded by roses that had finally started blooming again. The hose had been replaced. The gate fixed. The garden reclaimed. I wore a soft lavender dress, one Harold used to say brought out the fight in my eyes. The table was set with mismatched china, linen napkins, and a pitcher of fresh lemonade with mint from the little pot by the window. Laughter filled the air like birdsong. No court dates. No accusations. No sharp-tongued visits masked as concern. Just peace. And cinnamon scones. Evelyn leaned over and whispered, "You look 10 years younger." "I feel 10 years wiser," I whispered back. We toasted, not to revenge, not to survival, but to clarity. Because in the end, I didn't need to destroy Lisa. I didn't need to make her suffer the way she tried to make me suffer. I just needed to protect myself. To stand up, draw the line, and say, no more. I watched the women around me sip tea and tell stories about overgrown lawns and stubborn grandkids, and I realized something. This was my circle now. Not bound by blood, but by truth. I didn't miss Lisa. That ache, once sharp and pulsing, had dulled into something manageable. Something I could carry without it bending me out of shape. Sometimes I still looked at the photo of us, before the court battles, before the accusations, before I became someone she saw as an obstacle. But I no longer wondered what I did wrong. Because I didn't do anything wrong. I protected the life Harold and I built. I honored the love we had. And I gave Lisa more chances than she ever deserved. Now, my legacy would be mine to choose. And it would begin, right here, among lavender and sunlight, with good friends and no shadows. Sometimes, the best closure isn't slamming a door. It's planting something new in the space you cleared. And watching it bloom. Lately, I've been thinking about the word legacy. Not the kind that's written in bank ledgers or carved into tombstones. No, I mean the quieter kind. The one that lives in stories, in habits, in the way people remember your name when you're not in the room. For so long, I thought legacy meant leaving something behind for Lisa. A house, a trust, jewelry passed down from my mother's mother. The gold locket Harold gave me when Lisa was born. I used to polish that locket every year on her birthday. But now it sits in the drawer, untouched. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Because I finally understand, you don't owe inheritance to someone who's already thrown your love away. My legacy won't be measured in heirlooms. It'll be in what I rebuilt after she tried to tear it all down. In the way I now lock my doors without shame. In the way I hold my tea steady, even when memories try to rattle me. In the way I've started teaching a class, yes, at the very same community center where I first found help. Protecting Your Financial Future, a workshop for women. I sit with women who've been bruised by betrayal, not physically, but spiritually. And I tell them, you're not weak. You're just tired. And tired women can still rise. Some of them cry. Some of them laugh bitterly. But every single one writes something down. Just like I did. The little blue notebook from Evelyn is full now. Every page scratched with pain, proof, and power. I keep it in a drawer beside Harold's letters. Not because I want to reread it, but because it reminds me that I didn't imagine what happened. Lisa tried to erase me. And I wrote myself back in. I've started a new journal. This one is green. It begins with a single sentence. I am not what they tried to make me. That's my legacy. A story of someone who didn't shrink. Someone who didn't break. Someone who found peace, not because the world handed it to her, but because she fought for it with grace. It came in a plain white envelope. No return address, but I knew the handwriting the second I saw it. Rounded letters, slightly tilted, like she used to write on her school notebooks. Lisa. I stood in the doorway, sunlight pouring over the floorboards, holding that envelope like it was made of thorns. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the table. Made tea, fed the cat, swept the porch. When I finally sat down and slid it open, I already knew what I wouldn't find inside, an apology. And I was right. The letter began, I've had time to think. I realize now that maybe you misunderstood my intentions. I never wanted to hurt you. I was only trying to protect what's rightfully mine. Mine. That word again. No sorrow, no remorse. Just a rewording of the same old tune. She blamed her lawyer. She blamed stress. She even blamed Harold, said he should have made things clearer. Not once did she say, I'm sorry. Instead, she ended the letter with, if you reconsider, I'm willing to forgive everything and move forward, together. As if she was the one offering mercy. I folded the letter neatly. Placed it in a folder marked, personal, no response. Filed it next to court documents and copies of the will. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't write back. Because here's the thing, there comes a point when silence isn't surrender. It's self-respect. Lisa had her chance. Not once. Not twice. Many times. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I gave her access to my home, my heart, my trust. And she turned each one into a weapon. So no, I wouldn't send a reply. Not even a single word. Instead, I walked out to the garden, barefoot on cool morning grass, and sat beside Harold's favorite rosebush. The one with the stubborn white blooms. I leaned back in the chair and whispered, I didn't fall for it, Harold. The breeze shifted. A petal landed on my lap. And I knew, this wasn't bitterness. This was freedom. This morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Harold used to read the paper and tap his spoon against the rim of his mug. I looked around the room, not searching for anything, just seeing it. All of it. The soft hum of the fridge. The faded wallpaper with tiny sunflowers. The cat curled by the radiator. This was my life now. And it was enough. I took out the green journal, the one that started with, I am not what they tried to make me, and wrote one final line, peace is not quiet. It's earned. Lisa taught me that, not with love but with pressure. With betrayal. With attempts to turn my home into a courtroom and my grief into a transaction. And still, I stood. Not screaming, not begging, just refusing to be erased. The world wants to make women like me invisible. Especially when we age. Especially when we stop giving and start guarding. But I won't be invisible. I'll be the story someone else reads when they think they're alone. I'll be the voice that says, you're not crazy. You're not cruel. You're just done pretending this is love. I've changed my routines. Not out of fear, but out of intention. Locks secured. Legal files in place. Friends closer than ever. And every so often, a new woman shows up at my community workshop. She comes in with that same look I had, half shame, half shock, all ache. And I tell her what Evelyn told me, write it down. Lock it up. And don't let anyone tell you you imagined it. We don't need revenge. We need safety. We need truth. And sometimes, we just need one other woman to say, I see you. So if you're reading this, or listening to it, or holding your own bruised heart and wondering how it got this far, let me say it plain, you can choose your ending, you don't have to wait for theirs. Because I did. And this soft, steady, sunlit life I've built, this is mine.